لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله ما لنا رب سوى لا إله.
The night before the coffee house, Agent M was on their way back from Colombia with the world's highest quality coffee for the coffee house the next morning. As they entered the building where the event would be held, they were guarding the precious goods stored in the suitcase with their life as Agent S and Agent A secured the perimeter. The Boston Tea Party had been trying to sabotage the coffee house for weeks. Suddenly, the alarm system began blaring, yelling, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" And murky, boiling water began rushing towards the feet of the unsuspecting agents. Agent A slipped and fell, mouth filling up with the unknown substance. Stumbling to their feet, they yelled, "Save yourselves, it's tea!" Agent M and S immediately hoisted the suitcase up on their shoulders, protecting it from the water which was rapidly filling up the room. Wading through the water, they charged up the stairs to the roof where they sacrificed their lives to deliver the suitcase to the helicopter, which had been prepared in advance for such an emergency. "Save the coffee! Leave us!" said Agent S before slipping and falling off the roof. As the helicopter took off into the night, President J vowed that Agents M, S, and A had not lost their lives in vain as the suitcase was unzipped to reveal tea bags. Dun dun dun! Where had the coffee gone? Where had the coffee gone? Where had it ever really been there? Find out at the coffee house. So here's the next part. They were running out of time. President J and her entourage rushed towards Hilberry C, dreading the moment where they would face waiting students and tell them that the coffee house had been canceled. As they neared the room, they heard the sound of snapping? They slowed their pace as they entered the room and found themselves looking into a room full of students, sipping coffee and appreciating the art displayed around the room. "What happened?" asked President J, grabbing the nearest volunteer. "Aye, Pres, we were beginning to think you weren't going to make it," said Agent A, handing President J the cup of tea she was holding. "You're kind of late." She walked off with her tray, leaving President J gaping at the beverage in her hand. "Wait," said President J, grabbing her shoulder. "We thought you died. Why are you with the Boston Tea Party? Why are you serving tea? What happens to Agents M and S?" "We're right here," said a voice behind President J, who whirled around to face the pair. "The water was just a burst pipe," explaining Agent S, "and the alarm was just my new ringtone. In fact, it was the Boston Tea Party calling, admitting that the MSA girls are superior, and that the Boston Tea Party was willing to acknowledge their defeat in the writing competition as long as they were allowed to eat the donuts with us and attend the coffee house. Since nobody could contact you," chimed Agent M, "we went ahead and signed the truce, and even agreed to a rematch in the form of a skit competition." "Well," said President J, leading her entourage towards the stage, "at least you're all safe. The only loss we have from this is the funeral home deposit I made, but that money means nothing as long as the coffee house goes on." She grabbed the mic from the MC. "Let the festivities begin."
Have you ever felt the night's silver eyes fall upon you, their dancing and shimmering joy, watching you expectantly, as though you must do something, when all you can do is sit back and stare at them with bated breath? Have you ever heard the night's lingering whisper approaching, its singing and echoing acoustics, inviting you playfully as though you can join the humming, when all you can band is drumming ears and the returned silence close of death? Have you ever experienced the night in all its stillness, its meaningful pause to the day, holding you silent as though you are bound, when all you are is free and unshackled, but you dare not break its serenity? How can humans stand among such perfection and dare do anything but try to make himself as small as possible?
This is called patriarchy. At the center of the sociological imagination lives a captive princess in patriarchy. She knows not the efforts of Titan to love her as his object of choice. His discs of love can cut the bars of society, which will let her move her world and take a dive, plummeting into the world of thinking men among the ranks of artists, authors, scientists, and philosophers. But she fails to trace the ancient heart of Titan, where the patriarchy only exists in her mind.
So just to give a little bit of introduction over this, when you do a written piece, it's very difficult to like orally enunciate it out loud because it loses some of its depth. When you do a spoken word, there's more clarity. So I've written this poem instead of actually for the spoken word, but rather for the written one. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an intro as to the theme of it. The theme when I wrote this was around generosity. So to me, my first language is Arabic, so generosity means karam. There it is. Which the person who does the behavior of generosity is called kareem for male and karima for female. So those two words kind of floated in my head of karam and kareem. And now we'll start reading the poem. This is a two-piece poem, sounds in this as well. If you wish to know who I am, then speak my language. Speak and find that everything you lost was salvaged. For all the wounds that began to bleed, healed over once you began to read. So read me. Wrap yourself around my words and embrace them to my heart, till they hurt. For doesn't it pain your egos when I say your ancestors were once dirt? As your story stays hidden in a whispering tree made forbidden, you will wander as it goes, and for the things ahead, God only knows. For he blew into your heart and left a hole, gave my pages light to make you whole. So without you, my words fight silence. And without me, your peace speaks violence. So let me fight by you. As you speaketh me in that oneness, birth, tranquility. Yet at times I'm disputed when my hands extend to give. So I ask of them, what made you live? No response. So I read to them of death. Maybe then they will appreciate their existence from the spectacle of a finite breath. Inhale a microscopic universe that is so frail. Exhale a prophet from the mouth of a whale. And still, they can't hear me. A voiceless reminder I am to be. To a forgetful survivor banished for a tree. Now, read me.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق
Read.
خلق الإنسان من علق
Read.
اقرأ وربك الأكرم
Read. From his breath spoke the dirt. From his light healed the hurt. And as your story continues to scream, and as your heart of void continues to dream, read, and maybe one day you will hear. Yours truly, Qur'an Recitation.
Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. We're praying our hearts out. We're praying our hearts out for an overdue triumph. I don't even know where to start. Shall I begin with the parents who lost their kids, having to see them die in their arms, wishing it was them instead, God forbid? Or the brutal torture that can't even be expressed in words? Our Muslim brothers and sisters are dying in herds. Take a minute to really think about the position they are in. If you truly understood their pain and suffering, your heart would be grieving and aching therein. One who is not concerned for their affairs is no brother or sister of mine. How can one turn a cheek when innocent blood is being spilled? When will we draw the line? I ask you all to make sincere dua from the bottom of your heart, with sincerity and yaqeen, that Allah will not allow our ummah to fall apart. Nay, this will make our ummah stronger and purify our efforts. I ask Allah to bless all those who pursue justice with pure intention in their endeavors. As for those who bring about this injustice in the world, I feel they are not worth mentioning, for they will get what they deserve on the promised day of reckoning.
The scars on my body will never let me forget the misfortune that day brought upon me. In the early hours of that morning, I never conceived that I would be in an almost crippled state within the hour. As me and my cousin Afif left the house for work, I asked Afif if I could drive his motorcycle, not expecting traffic at such a time. Incidentally, we encountered dense traffic as soon as he departed from home, but quite surprisingly, the traffic dissipated as soon as I drove onto the Musi River Bridge. As I quickly accelerated, a flash of events resulted in an unforgettable collision. I narrate the episode blow by blow. The road clears up and I drive onto the Nusi River Bridge. Up ahead of me there is a blue bus on the right and a motorbiker on my left. I am between the two but farther behind and picking up speed. I proceed to pull up between the two and pass the biker. The motorbiker, with a world of space on his left, moves his bike right into mine. But it's not like I can do anything because I'm sandwiched between he who does hit me and the bus on my right. What transpired next was so wild that I barely remember it in discrete frames. My eyes widened and I screamed, "No!" in the split second in which I sensed the inevitable clink of metal on metal. Back and forth like a high-frequency sine wave, the bike wobbled, the high speed serving to maximize the impending impact with the rough asphalt. Strangely, after those lengthy, agonizing milliseconds on the juddering motorcycle, my meeting with the ground arrived slower than I expected. As my world turned upside down, metaphors aside, I could not tell whether the sky was black or the road was blue. But when I fell, my adrenaline production did not cease. After contact with the ground, I skidded on the asphalt. I knew I couldn't roll because that would take up more time, which I didn't have. There was an entire fleet of bikes, cars, and lorries right behind me, with all of us confined on the narrow bridge. When I screeched to a stop, I stood up and immediately felt my head spin from having bounced on the ground. My second reaction was to take a step and instantly collapse from the injuries I had sustained. I had no bearing on their extent and struggled to drag myself to the side of the bridge to get out of the way of the oncoming traffic. In India, there is no such thing as calling the police for a crash unless someone dies or needs an ambulance. Between this range of getting a fender bender to being fatally injured exists the resolution of accusatory shouting, and once the anger has dissipated, get back in on one's respective vehicle and drive on. So this being my first accident, Hafiz stepped up to be my anger translator. Well, in truth, he was his own translator because I was in total shock and entirely immune to physical sensory input and emotions. My world was silent and all I saw was Hafiz's mouth moving aggressively as the motorist who drifted into me. When my auditory receptors restarted and kicked in, I realized that I heard only one voice. Forget shouting, the other motorist wasn't even listening to Hafiz. In fact, he seemed to be too preoccupied examining his jacket, whose sleeve had stripped clean off. When he looked eventually, the man looked at Hafiz with a blank look. It was as if he couldn't understand what had just happened. He seemed to be a docile, meek sort of person, not the sort who would counter Hafiz's fury. He was also so disoriented that the poor man thought Hafiz had been riding. Realizing the futility of his wrath, Hafiz turned to me and examined and interrogated me for injuries. I was still too numb to feel the implications of the accident and told him I was okay and that we should get going so he doesn't get late to work. I hadn't looked down at myself when he eyed me down, only then did I become self-conscious enough to look at what had become of me. I saw my every article of clothing shredded. Through these holes, bits of flesh and blood from every joint on my right side, on which side I'd fallen, struggled for passage. He, on the other hand, looked ready for his morning meeting. Reluctantly taking my word that I wasn't really too bad, he proceeded to pick up the motorcycle and its two broken bits, and we took off into the rising sun. Even to myself, it seems as if I'm blaming the accident on the other motorist. Truthfully, I cannot reckon how much of it was my fault. When Hafiz turned away from the other motorist to face me, all I could say to him was, "Hafiz, I'm sorry." First, I had damaged his bike. Not vastly. The passenger footrest had broken and the headlight had cracked. Secondly, Hafiz had trusted me with his prized motorcycle, and I ended up crushing it regardless of whether it was my fault or not. And thirdly, I truly believed that it was wholly my fault at the time. In later discussions, Hafiz assured me that it was the other guy who obliviously moved into my lane, so how could it have been my fault? Nevertheless, the guilt of the crash remained in my mind, and I did not voice it further. When looking in retrospect, it may indeed have been my mistake for not being cautious enough, but to repress my conscience, I might be falsely convincing myself of my innocence. Inversely, it may truly have been the other man's blame, but my conscience may not be letting me go unpunished because of the consequences. In summation, the entire episode led me to the metaphorical hilltop of philosophy to ponder over how our minds truly perceive. The light that enters the eyes is invariably set to a filter. What is this sift? Why, when having seen it, when having done it, why question my sanity? The soul, the conscience, this phantom yet sovereign entity that does indeed rule me with bulletproof solipsistic power is my humanizer. The incident was singular, but the testimonies of the sufferers, both of them, were as different as night and day. And they're truly honest testimonies. Would I be indignant or even furious, regardless of if the situation was reversed? Of course I would. Concession is the first step towards doom. And doom is anti-survival instinct. The mind takes black and white, blends them, convolutes them, dilutes them, and then molds it into two entirely new shades of white and black. Black and white, nonetheless, though different enough. In the end, though, actions rest on one's intentions. It is possible that the doubts in my mind over my fault in the matter are signs of a clean conscience. The fact that I want to consider my shortcomings and not blatantly disregard any blame I may have, could be the indication of my blamelessness. Nevertheless, one thing is for sure, I should at least get my motorcycle license.
This is by Beanish. It's called Poem for My Older Sister. Sometimes I forget that you were here before me, that you lived and existed for 10 years without me. Does that mean I, too, will be here for 10 years without you? Does that mean I owe time a debt? I decided that I would like to die exactly 10 years after you. I will pay my debt. I just hope time doesn't demand interest.
Assalamu alaikum. Wow, that was a okay, I have a poem that's a little bit longer than other ones that were performed, but this is a poem that some of you may have heard, may not, but I performed it before in front of large groups of people, but it's entitled The Rebels. They called them rebels without a cause, so they became like wounded veterans without a gauze to dress their self-inflicted wounds. Self-inflicted because it was them who learned to bite their tongues, clench down on anything just to stay silent. But it was this silence that had built up inside them for so long, like a gun in the hands of a child. They were bound to go off. Their words were beginning to slowly creep up from a place they'd been shoved away for so long. They had waited for so long. Now they finally had their chance. They waited once more, a pin-drop silence amongst the crowd. When all eyes were on them, one by one, they began to read aloud from crevices no one knew existed, not even themselves up until now. In front of a crowd, all with minds of their own. Who were they to try to stand up and recite a poem? But they began. Talib, age 12. There's a prison in my backyard. And it's like they placed it there because they predicted my future and wanted to remind me I'd been dealt a black card. But every day that I have to pass that prison on my way to school, it only stands as a reminder. There's someone out there who built this structure. And like the amateur drawings in my old Spider-Man backpack, they must have started from somewhere. See, I want to be an architect. But from the message that Mia has given me, I can't quite connect. See, the rappers say they started from the bottom, now they're here, but where are they really? But every day I walk to school, and every day I pass that prison, and every day I dream. I am a rebel, and this is my cause. In a world full of confusion, I patiently persevere. Sada, age 16. According to the latest teen magazine, I'm oppressed. And it's all because of the limitations to the way that I can dress. Looks of pity because I must be depressed. My blood boils because don't they see? If they are free enough to uncover what they want, why can't I be free enough to cover what I want? It's like we live in a country where we can be anything we want, but we're afraid to be the only things we truly are, ourselves. But I'm a rebel, and this is my cause. In a world full of judgment, I patiently persevere. Anwar, age 18. Don't lie to me. Don't sugarcoat the truth. I am strong enough. I didn't understand what it was when the man and the woman in white robes were comforting my mother, whose tears reminded me of that rain cloud that appeared on that sunny day. I mean, there were days when I couldn't get out of bed, and yes, days when my eyes would cry streams of bloodshot red, but I thought this was normal until I found out it was cancer. Now, most people would tell me I'm brave. I'm not sure they understand. This is pure patience, and with that patience comes that bravery, because I've tried crying, I've tried denying, I've tried acting as if everything was okay, but the fact is, I'm dying. So I've learned to patiently wait. I'm a rebel, and this is my cause. In a world where everyone sings of living forever, I am patiently waiting for death. Comes up. Age 13. I am a teenage Syrian living in America. How much patience can I possibly have? It's like I'm living in the shade of my family's killer, but my Lord says, "O ye who believe, persevere in patience and consistency." Words I wish that while wiping the tears of my motherland and soothing the aching hearts of children with bloodied hands, I could remind them of. One day I received a picture of my entire family wrapped in angelic cotton cloth. Smiles masking their faces, but not big enough to mask the bullet holes in their hearts. O ye who believe, persevere in patience. O ye who believe, persevere in patience. O ye who believe, persevere in patience and consistency. Those who patiently persevere will truly receive a reward without measure. I am a rebel, and this is my cause. In a cruel world, I patiently persevere. See, struggle knows no color. Pain knows no age. Therefore, this patience is a universal rule for those who wish to be saved from the iron grasp of this world. And I wish I could paint these children a portrait, because love would be their color. A mixture of pastel blues and heartfelt pinks, maybe hints of angelic white. I've come to learn that heroes have no age. And it's funny how experiencing the warmth of youth can remind me to live. And it's even funnier how a person's struggle can remind you of the patience life truly takes. But O ye who believe, persevere in the patience and consistency. Thank you.
Hello world, thank you. When I entered your realm, you provided me with the best ingredients with which I could take my first breath. Hello world, indulge me. How hot can the sun get so I can spend my hours splashing around in your fresh waters? Hello world, indulge me. How tall can the snowbanks grow so I can build a palace out of ice? Hello world, indulge me. How hard can the rain fall so I can splash hard in the knee-high puddles and make delicious mud pies? Hello world, indulge me. How fast can the wind blow so I can chase the dandelion petals that fly fast, faster than eagles? Hello world, stop. How fast can, too hot and sticky, I cannot focus on my work. Hello world, stop. The wind is blowing too fast. The power lines are giving in. Hello world, stop. Too many clouds, no cell reception. Hello world, stop. The roads are icy and the bitter cold attacks my nose, attacks my fingers. Hello world, I'm sorry. You took care of me and I neglected you. Hello world, I'm sorry. You shake the ground, screaming for my attention, and I curse at your destruction. Hello world, I'm sorry. You chase me with giant waves, begging for my affection, and I just run farther and farther and farther. Hello world, I'm sorry. Your selfless nature cannot be stopped, as you will house me. You will see me, long after I can no longer see myself. Hello world, I'm sorry. One as magnificent as yourself should never be anything less than what you can be. Hello world, I'm sorry. Hello world, forgive me.
So this is a story that I'm pretty sure most of you have heard, and it's my take on it. So hope you enjoy it. His eyes swept over the people as he spoke. He met each pair of eyes, each different set, and saw in them love, compassion, and desire to hear more. He trusted his people would do anything for him. He shifted slightly on the stump of the trunk of a once glorious tree. When he finished his lecture and sent his peace towards his people, a woman came to him. She offered him 3 steps he could use as a platform to speak from. He accepted the offer. As soon as his next assembly with his companions, he went to his new platform. He began his discussion with them, advising them, leading them to the path of enlightenment. That's when they heard it. The cries, the profound wails echoing through the air around them. His people looked around, frantically turning their heads. Who was crying? Where was it coming from? Make it stop. Then they noticed their beloved prophet move towards his stump. Their eyes widened as they realized the source of those anguished cries. The serene man petted the stump as the cries slowly subsided. as they whimpered and sniffled away. That stump wailed because it missed him. That man, that wonderful man. He has been dead for over 1,400 years. He has dedicated his life for us, for his ummah. Don't you miss him? Don't you love him? An inanimate, solid, abiotic object cried for him. What about you? What about me? Our red blood swimming through our living bodies, our heart pumping, pumping, pumping. We all know the loving it's capable of. I love you, Prophet Muhammad, and your ummah does as well. How I wish I was that tree existing beside you, hearing the glorious words sent from our Creator, feeling your hands palming me. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Rasulullah.